I think you also need to give me. Yeah, we're recording now. All right. So you can hear me loud and clear.
I could. Can you hear
Awesome.
me?
Awesome. Yep, I can hear you. We had a few technical difficulties. So, anyways, how's it going, man? How are you?
I'm doing okay, man. Just the usual. Just busy with work. Just spending my days doing what I can to keep it together. How about you?
Same, same. What do you mean? What do you mean? Keep it together before we get into it. Keep it together, like you're going insane, or what's happening?
I'm. I guess you're reading a little bit too much into it. No, I'm not. I'm not going insane. Just mainly keeping yourself in a good mood, given the current limitations. It's a
Yeah,
little bit optimistic seeing that things are opening up again. Um,
yeah.
so
No,
yeah,
I feel you.
and just the way of you spending time.
Hmm.
So for the most part, I'm doing a lot, spending a lot of time working,
Hmm.
and right now, I'm starting to see different ways I can spend my time better.
Nice, nice. Same, man. I'm really in the same boat here. Busy working, but also trying to exercise. Obviously, not to get fat. I sent you that link, by the way, the insanity challenge. That
Yeah,
was
yeah.
something that actually helped me a lot. One of my coworkers sent that to me, and since then I started doing that. And, that's really been what's keeping me in shape, mostly.
It's
Uh,
important.
yeah, it is for sure. I uh, I wanted to chat with you because I know we had a lot of discussions prior to this as well around, you know, career progression, about growth, the future, etc., etc. And obviously, I wanted to know. So, can you tell me what did you study at university, and then your because I know you founded or started or were part of a lot of companies as well. You know, whether it's with the iLead for entrepreneurship or with Hatchery and things like that. So I wanted to kind of talk about some of those experiences.
Yeah, man, for sure. So in terms of education, I did industrial engineering in my undergrad, and then I did my master's in engineering, focused on financial engineering and data analytics,
Hmm.
both at U of T. And during my undergrad, I did do POI, just like most people. I was with Unilever. Um, I was working in a manufacturing plant.
Hmm.
After that, I did capstone project with PNG, which is pretty cool. Like we kind of built, we applied what we learned in our courses in optimization and operations research. What we did is we built a model to investigate ways in which they can reduce costs, which was also a really cool experience. In terms of the entrepreneurial route that you asked about, well, between undergrad and masters, I was really excited. And just like everyone else, I had a dream of becoming an entrepreneur. Of course, back then I didn't know anything. Uh, so I did was I was really passionate about like seeing the difficulties that students face in getting the first internship.
Hmm.
I was trying to really do what I can to solve that problem, and that's what really inspired it. It's with the struggle that a lot of students face towards getting their first experience, because it's a chicken egg situation. Like you need experience to get internships, but you need internships to get experience.
Yeah, yeah.
And for me, what I was looking to do is to help like I was trying to focus on small and medium businesses, mainly because they are underrepresented, and given the pool of students, everybody was focused on the huge companies, like the big ones that
Yeah,
everybody applies
corporation.
for.
Yeah.
Yeah, but regardless, working in small and medium companies could be a really valuable experience, or at least to kind of start building up your profile. So my idea was trying to apply some form of a way to connect psychometric assessments, that is assessing your personality and your cognitive ability, etc., like all these standardized tests
Right,
to
right.
kind of build a profile and helping companies like it's both ways. A company would do an assessment, a candidate would do an assessment, and based on the profile of a specific personality that the company would need for to fill in a role, they would get matched with candidates that meet these parameters based on what the student or the applicant does on the platform.
Interesting.
And of course, I was a student, right? So, what do I know about psychology back then? I was really relying on third-party companies to pull all these assessments together, and then like just build an algorithm on top of it to do some sort of a matching criteria. Now, when I spoke to recruiters, they kind of really liked the idea, and that was like the key value proposition that they really enjoyed because it would make their life easier in narrowing down like the top 10 candidates that they would need.
Definitely.
The problem is from a business side, if you want to start a company, you need a feasible business model. And like this is like using these assessments is a variable cost. It's not a fixed cost. I would have to pay more with respect to more volume people
Hmm.
using my platform. So the only way you could actually start making money is the opportunity that we saw was doing the onboarding for the company. That is doing all the forms, seeing what tax returns they could get, doing all the process.
From start to
Uh,
finish, yeah.
yeah, for the onboarding to make sure that like once you've selected someone, you pay us money,
Mm-hmm.
a fixed amount of money, because you hired him through us or her, and then we would do the onboarding for them, and they would send us a percentage of like the salary on a bi-weekly basis. So now this became some sort of a temp agency, because like that's like the business model for temp agencies. But this is where we hit the barrier. It was mainly like companies were like, yeah, well, you're pretty much like when you talk to HR, they'll be like, yeah, well, you pretty much want to take my job, right? Like it's my job to sit down and do the onboarding and all this paperwork. It's an HR function. It's like, and we don't need us to outsource this task for you and bill us on that. All we want.
Although I should say, by the way, just to jump in real quick, it's not the job of HR to just do onboarding. I think HR encompasses a lot more. You know, it also is very close to the company culture as well. Maybe onboarding is a small part, right?
It is no doubt.
Hmm.
It is no doubt. I guess the problem that we're really trying to solve for them is helping them make their job easier,
Hmm.
because unfortunately, the customers in this case are the companies. This is the only way we can make money. Students don't have money to pay us for this process.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, uh, like your entire business case is based on what your customers want, right? So I was inspired by the struggle that students face, but then the way I was going about it is by solving a problem for the companies themselves. And when you start focusing on solving a problem for the company themselves, then this is where like things kind of get confusing and twisted. Mainly because now our paying customers are the companies, right?
Mhm.
And in that case, they were like the onboarding piece does not make sense for us. We just want to pay you for you to match us with the top 10 candidates that we want. Like that is
Yeah.
something we're interested in. Now, from business side, from business sense, from business model sense, that did not make sense, of course, right? Like because I can't afford to pay third-party vendors and expect us to be lifted off the ground. And no investor would want to really invest in an idea like that.
Yeah.
So then we were forced to pivot, and then I grounded myself, and like our team, we grounded ourselves back to seeing like who are we trying to really trying to help. It's the students, right? And this is where our second pivot came in, and which was helping students network with professionals.
Hmm.
And this might seem a little cheesy, but the idea was to help students connect with professionals. Like that is matching them based on past experience, different affiliations in student clubs, education, etc. Like different parameters.
Yeah, yeah.
For that, uh, we did not want to reinvent the wheel because there were apps that were out there.
Who would already do that? Yeah.
Yeah, and for an app to do that, you need people to sign up from both the professional side and the student side, right? So you need users for this to actually, for you to actually do the matching criteria, because you need data.
You need data, yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
And for us, because we didn't want to reinvent the wheel, we wanted to leverage what was existing out there. And of course, LinkedIn is is the biggest database and of professions, professionals, and different company brands and different industries, right?
Definitely.
And
It just needs to get a little more authentic, though, because I feel like there's a lot of back and forth artificial conversations. You know.
yeah, like for us, we're going to be talking about like we pretty much just wanted to help students figure out how they want to go about networking, because
Yeah.
it was new to me when I was a student. I didn't know what networking was. I didn't know how to go about it, right? And a lot of people, a lot of students out there, it's a little bit scary and overwhelming for them
I
to put
agree.
themselves out there and reach out to people, and they wouldn't know how to go about it, what to write, what the etiquette is,
For
how to
sure.
structure
For sure.
yourself, how to have leads, because at this point you're like a salesperson, right? You're you're pretty much scouting and seeing what's out there and trying to build your leads with respect to different companies and different industries, right? And it's a process. So we wanted to leverage LinkedIn's data, and we wanted to have some sort of a CRM and different features within the app that we wanted to build to help a student organize the networking activity, and or structure their interests with respect to industries and sub industries within industries, and what companies do these kind of works, what kind of positions are out there with
Mhm.
respect to the job boards. So all of that required a lot of integration, and of course LinkedIn wouldn't give us their data. Again, I was naive and I was really ambitious, and we spoke to LinkedIn, and they were not interested in giving us their data at all. And that was it. This is when I realized, like, sometimes you gotta know when to pull the plug, and I wanted to give myself that experience to see and to see it through, because I didn't want this to haunt me afterwards, and in case it didn't work out. And for that reason, I'm glad I actually went through that experience. It really taught me a lot about my interests, the kind of work I wanted to do, and it was a really informative experience for me to direct my focus and my energy, and that's what I did in my masters.
So that's actually a really really interesting journey that you walked me through. Obviously, with the first pivot, the second pivot, and your thought process behind all of this. And I should say, most people, they would maybe abandon or even not start a certain idea or execute on it because they might either get overwhelmed or dissuaded by the opinions that other people hold of that idea. So I want to know, you went through this and you said that it's helped you, right? What
Mm.
what are some things that you think really stand out in terms of the lessons that you learned or the experiences that you gained? Have they actually helped you in your day-to-day work life right now as well, or any change in who or how you perceive the business world?
Oh, absolutely. Well, first of all, definitely communication and presentation skills. I was every 2 weeks we had to go on a panel and do a 6-minute pitch of our entire idea, the business case, the stakeholders, the business opportunity, the business model.
And this was
Your
through
projections.
the hatchery.
Yes, the
Okay.
Hatchery honestly is really good. It's a great program
Mhm.
and for students to go. Of course, it's one of many incubators. That's at
Yeah.
many different universities, and U of T specifically, it has a lot of incubators. The Hatchery is the engineering one. It's the
Yep.
one for the engineers, right?
Yep.
And actually, like Kepler, it's one of the like a it's a really interesting company now. That's
Oh, Kepler is
uh,
the space.
Yeah. And Kepler
Yeah. Yeah.
is a Hatchery alumni.
Hmm.
Yeah, so like it's a really great program. Like even if you don't succeed in terms of getting a startup, like honestly,
Yeah.
it's really helped me with my presentation and communication skills, and plus it really gave me perspective, right? It really hammered down understanding how to do competitive analysis, how to go about a business model, thinking about the channels, and of course, we had to use a business canvas to structure our thoughts and use design thinking uh, to really guide the way we want to do our research. That involved, you know, running interviews with users, you doing usability testing, designing interfaces and prototypes, and thinking about the research questions that you want.
Hmm.
Um, what else?
I'm sure there's a lot of intricate thought process behind design thinking, right?
Yeah, like it was definitely like the first time I actually put design thinking into action. Right,
Mhm.
it was one of the very first time that I've done that. And plus like it really drove my curiosity more towards thinking about how I want to go about solving problems and structuring the thought and how to find root problems and honestly like the root cause of problems. And honestly like that is it's that experience that drove my curiosity to even learn more about design thinking and apply it more. uh,
So moving forward, right? So right now, I assume that, and I mean, I know you have a day job, and you have a, basically a 9 to 5 job, and you're working in that. You're, I think, a technical consultant, is what it is,
yes.
right, at IBM. And obviously you've had other positions as well, at RBC, getting valuable experiences from these corporations. But overall, do you think your plan is to continue on this path, or do you want to take another stab at the entrepreneurial life again?
I mean, like, it's not a definitive yes or no.
Hmm.
For me, like, one thing I've learned, looking back at the series of evolutions that I've went through ever
Yeah.
since I came to Canada and started university, looking back, it was the journey, right? And it was the decisions that I've made. And frankly, the one thing I've learned is the importance of you to trust your journey and trust the process, because life is not, again, it's cheesy and
As cheesy as it sounds, I was going to
yeah,
say, yeah.
it's not a race, it's a marathon, right? And it's something that you just enjoy. And if you even look at a lot of the successful entrepreneurs that are out there, for them, what really made it for them is not necessarily like the success that they've achieved. What really made it for them is looking back about how interesting the journey was, right? And them looking back at it and they're like, wow, like I did this and this was a lot of fun, because eventually like things get old, and the faster something comes to you, the faster you're gonna take it for granted. So for me, so pretty much like to answer your question, like I'm not against looking back into entrepreneurship, but it's not something that I'm particularly emphasizing on as of today,
I
right?
see what you
Because
mean. Yeah.
right now I'm happy with where I'm at, mainly because there's a lot of things that I'm cognizant that there's a lot of things I still need to learn, and in this new job I am learning a lot of new things,
Hmm.
and I'm really getting a lot of perspective. And what really guided the way that I structure my learning and look at things is what I've done in terms of going out there and starting my own company, like trying to start it, right? Like
Right.
you actually wanting to go and do it. This is when you look at things in a deeper level, you try to internalize what you're looking at and what you're reading. And you're trying to make sense out of it in your own way and strategize. So it really taught me how to learn, and it gave me that motivation to actually be invested in what I want to do uh, and really internalize everything that I'm learning. And
So,
this is
how do
how I
you
think that journey helped
how do
me.
you go about that, Mo? By the way, I'm curious to know what's your process behind learning something. Is obviously, I know everyone learns in a different way, but you specifically, right? Like, because I'm talking to you today, I've talked to you a year ago, I've talked to you 2 years and 3 years ago, and every time, obviously, I've seen this evolution behind your thought process and behind the way that you structure your thoughts. And I'm curious, how do you go about learning, and how do you go about thinking in that way?
No, like I guess like what I'm trying to say, like for me at least, when I read something, like I like to connect it,
Okay.
and really make sense out of it, in my own way, like in the way that, like, I really try to validate my understanding of what I'm reading, and make sure that, and like now we're getting a little bit hypothetical, so I might get lost in the way that I'm trying to
That's
explain
fine, man.
this.
That's fine. Go ahead.
Uh, but like, when you read something, you can just read it, or when you read something, it makes you think, right? It makes you
Ah,
think
okay.
about different things. Like, what does this mean? Like, how is a specific topic or an article that you're reading is going to influence, or the world, or it might be about something that's changing in one industry. How is this going to impact other industries? How is this going to evolve the industry in 5 years, right?
Yeah, yeah. That's what you
Looking,
mean.
looking at what's happening around you, right? Like, why would, when people say, oh, this company is going to be great in 5 years, right? And you truly understand and read about this company and understand the business model, the customer base, the competition, and you can make your own judgment on why you think they're going to be successful, and why you think you wouldn't, right? It's really forming an opinion about it, uh, by truly understanding everything that's involved,
Yeah.
and it's that business framework, like you truly understanding the business framework and the impact of the competitive landscape, and how that influences the progression of a company or
So,
an
so
idea.
basically, so basically, instead of looking at a piece of information or whatever it is that you're reading as one discrete point, you're looking at how all the different systems are interconnected. Based on that,
Yeah.
developing a perspective out of that, right?
Yeah, and honestly, like, this is a very analytical way of looking at it, and that's something I've learned. Like, I don't know if it's engineering or it's the way I've always way of looking at it, because like you really trying to connect the dots,
Hmm.
with everything that's happening.
That makes sense. That makes sense. And you said that it's not black and white, and you're not in a rush. So right now you're in that learning process, and like you said, if it comes too fast, some things you just take it for granted. So right now you're just on your own kind of journey, and learning, and just growing, right?
Yeah, and frankly, like, and honestly, I truly think that, so sometimes we all need to take a step back and just enjoy what we have,
Mm.
because like, time is a very valuable resource, and it's something that we won't get back. So, like, just do what makes you happy. It's that simple. Like, it's just, like, sometimes I've truly drained myself in the pursuit of a venture, or a pursuit of something, that I forget how to enjoy life.
Mm.
And honestly, like, this is where people would talk about work-life balance. Work is not work. Work is, like the way I see it, if it's okay if you're working long hours, but if it feels like work, if it feels like a chore, like, this is where you need to take a step back and reevaluate why you're doing what you're doing. In my opinion, you finding your passion is, you don't, like, you wouldn't even feel the time going by if you're doing something that you're really excited about.
Yeah, you're in a
and
flow.
this is and this is why, like, I'm not in a rush, because I know that once I find my calling, or once I find the one thing that really excites me, and I put in the time into it, it becomes my own. That it becomes something that I own, and something that I'm really passionate about, and it wouldn't feel like work. Which is why, like, I'm saying that, like, I'm not in a rush,
Yeah.
because you shouldn't, like, force anything upon yourself.
Yeah, no, forcing anything just doesn't help, for sure. And it might not even be one specific calling, by the way. It might be a bunch of things, or it might be one specific thing right now, and then 5 years, 10 years from now, it's something else, totally different, right?
Of course, and honestly, whether you succeed or fail, there's always something to be learned from there. Like, you should learn from why you succeeded in something, but if you failed, you shouldn't beat yourself. and look back and see like why have I failed? You know, did
Yeah,
I
yeah.
was it something I was doing wrong, or was I not in the right headspace? It can be many different things, not necessarily in how you went about doing something, but in the state that you were in, for instance.
By the way, talking about headspace, do you meditate?
Uh, yeah, a little bit.
A little bit.
Honestly, uh, I guess like the way I see meditation, I might be wrong. There's not. I haven't read up too much about meditation, but like the way I see it, if you are like just content, like not complacent, but content, right? Like you're just in peace.
Hmm.
You know, like you're not worried, right? Like something
Yeah.
comes up, you're not stressed. You deal with things, you're calm, you're collected. I think that is the purpose of meditation. When you are like in a, when you feel overwhelmed or drained or tired, frustrated, whatever it is, meditation, in my opinion, is just a way to help you, you know, like release all that stress and negativity away from you and put you in a more calm and collected headspace, right? For me, recently, I've honestly been very, like very calm and happy
That's
with the
good,
way
man.
things are, which is why I haven't really seen the need to meditate. But I might be wrong, right? Because I'm not an expert on this topic, and I
Yeah,
just
I
want to
mean,
point
look,
that out.
meditation from what I understand, the way I do it, and I've seen other people say it, talk about it, and put it in practice, is just the whole art of being in the present, right? It's like one negative thought comes into your mind, and there's so many different thoughts, whether from the past or from the future, that come into our mind. If we're able to observe them, put a label on them, they lose their power and they don't have control over us in the way that they always do when we're just subconsciously always worried and anxious and whatever. And by focusing on your breathing or any other thing that's in the present, it can be some noise outside, it can be a line on the road you're focusing on, whatever it is, just as long as you're in the present, then you reach that state that you're talking about as well, where you're content because there's nothing from the past or the future that's out of control bothering you. You know what I mean?
Precisely, yeah, and I second that.
Yeah, and I personally haven't done it consistently. I can't. I got to be honest here. I probably do it maybe 2 times or 3 times a week, but I've been doing it more regularly, and it's been helping a lot. Especially if you're someone who is always thinking, always on. It helps a lot just to step back and observe these thoughts and say they're separate from who I am. They're just
And how has it helped you? Like, have you noticed any difference?
yeah, yeah, of course. I mean, I'm more calm and in control of my reactions. Basically, I'm not reacting to stuff as much as I did before, right? Like someone will say something or I have a certain thought pop up, instead of internalizing it and letting it affect me and really getting drowned basically in that thought, because your mind, you get deep into it, it can actually like drown you with thoughts. So you take a step back and you're like, oh, that's my mind is playing something with me again, it's playing a trick again, like, oh, I caught it again, I'm thinking about this is how it's making me feel. And the moment you actually observe it, you're like, oh, that's negative, right? That's negative thinking. You're you're taking the power away from the thought and putting power into the present, and that's honestly been helpful.
Okay, I can see that. Yeah, because it could also be a way of managing your or controlling your own emotions. You know,
Definitely.
something that would, you know, distill a specific emotion out if you were able to really identify it right away, and having and building some sort of a system uh, to eliminate that emotion if it was counterproductive, then
Definitely.
I can see how this is helpful.
See,
Yeah,
and this
well,
is, this is full circle to your startup, by the way, what you were talking about, let's say psychometric testing, right? So if you continue with that, which by the way, while you were talking, I didn't want to interrupt you, but that's really a great idea, because in general, as we move forward, it's good to get these sorts of tests. Now, some people say personality tests are inaccurate, and I can see why. Let's say Myers-Briggs or the big five personality, which is more accepted among the scientific community. But in general, if you can stack people up like that, not only can you understand how people would react in certain situations, you can also train them to start covering up those weaknesses and gaps that they have. And then on top of that, create teams that have synergy together, right? You're like putting in someone who's more logical with someone who's more intuitive, putting someone who's more conscientious against someone who's, let's say, more creative. All of these kind of play different dynamics in a team, right?
Yeah, in fact, it's important. It's definitely an analytical way of going about it.
Yeah,
Because now ideally, if you have all these data points and you're really clever in the way that you put people together, that could be extremely effective. And I'd imagine that a lot of services companies, when they want to deal with clients, they would really be able to guess the persona type of their client, right?
yeah,
So this way, when you approach or you want to communicate, you'd kind of present yourself in the best light possible, right? To accommodate whatever like that person's personality or habits are,
for
or
sure.
the way they like to do work.
For sure. Now,
Um,
I don't know how they would account for the bias, though. That's something that maybe like, how would they know? Because mostly in interviews or different tests, people are much better than they really are, right? So, or maybe
I'm
they might answer questions in a way that might bias the results. You know what I mean? Um,
mm,
Not sure how they account for that.
Honestly, like, this is a topic that's definitely not in my area of expertise,
Yeah, yeah,
so I don't know how to answer that question. And like you've mentioned, another interesting point, that a lot of people would say that personality assessments are inaccurate.
yeah,
I'm not entirely sure like how accurate or inaccurate they may be. But one thing that I I would say is personality traits change over time. So the personality trait you might have, now, might not be the same 5 years from now,
definitely,
be-
definitely.
be- because of the way that you grew or the way that you've evolved, right?
Mhm.
So it's not like it's a stable thing. It's something that's constantly changing. It's more dynamic. It's not static.
Yep, I agree. I agree. And there's been a lot of different instances where I actually saw that in myself, whether it's going from being an introvert to an extrovert or vice versa. And in different situations, you might be a different way. But overall, I've done the Myers-Briggs test, I've done the Big Five, and both of them for me they've been pretty accurate. Again, I might be biased because I read something, then I'm like, yes, that's me, and be biased like that. But I think it's really interesting to know that. And then on top of that, I read this, not read, I saw this video that Yuval Noah Harari, the author of Sapiens, was talking at Google, and he was talking about how in the future we're gonna have biotech companies merge with IT companies to basically create microchips that can monitor our chemicals in our bodies and then be able to predict how we'll be able to or we will act in different situations. And he said, obviously, this is a little far into the future, but all you need is data and advanced computers. And to me, that was kind of scary, looking at it like, oh, we can actually monitor different chemicals in the human body to predict how they would act in a certain situation. It's almost like a movie, you know?
Yeah, like I guess ideally, like, you still need a lot of benchmark,
A lot of it.
like a lot of benchmark data, and it's very unique to like every individual. Like, I'd imagine like that's something that's gonna be incredibly complex. It's really interesting to see how that would pan out.
For sure.
But
For
yeah,
sure.
but like I think we're definitely headed towards an interesting era ahead of us. And it could be something that scares you, but me, I'm more of an optimist. So I'm actually really excited to see how that would work out, because people are really concerned about data privacy, and like
Exactly. You touched on a
right?
good point. Yeah,
And frankly, like data privacy has become a really important topic in both in government and in terms of private companies that manage data, right? Technology companies, and
definitely.
it's become a top priority. And really identifying this and create a new product or the way that they want to do an implementation of some sort of a system. And frankly, like I believe that like Europe with the GDPR, I think it's called. Um, I'm gonna have to refresh my memory, but it's they pretty much like set up a new way or a regulation in the way that tech companies would have to handle data,
Okay.
and it should
Who
give
enforces this,
ownership,
by the way?
huh?
Who enforces these regulations?
Oh, it's the it's the government in
Government.
Europe.
Okay.
Yeah, and pretty much like what it says is that the person who owns the data is the user, right? It's a consumer.
Yeah.
Like you should own your own private data. It's
Mhm.
you should own your own data, right? So like having these kind of regulations and these motions set in place, I truly think that if it continues to progress that way, then the future wouldn't be as bad as people would imagine it is. Like there's still good in what's happening, and people are discussing ethics now in terms of implementing exponential technologies.
Now,
Like,
I mean that's really good. I'm just not sure if it's too late or not because over the past 20 years, or let's say just 10 years, all these corporations like Google, Facebook, Amazon, they've gathered a lot of data already, right? From us. Now, not sure. And by the way, the data has already been used in ways that were so-called unethical, or let's say what Facebook did with that company, that scandal that happened. I forgot the name.
Cambridge Analytica.
Yes, yes, thank you. So like things like that already happen, and if what you're saying is like actually happens, that's really good. Like having that privacy as well.
The
But
way the way I see it, all of
yeah,
this was very new to us. Having all these tools at
mhm,
our disposal, at institutions' disposal for them to leverage
mhm,
and execute on, uh, we didn't really understand the implications and the level of influence
yeah,
that like these tools would actually have, whether on a country level or even on a global level, right? And now, and I truly think that mistakes needed to happen for people to learn and
yeah.
understand the risks, and really help them understand the consequences of having this uncontrolled, right?
That's a fair insight. Yeah, yeah, no, I see what you mean. That makes sense. That
So
makes sense.
so this is why, like, right, like you don't know what you don't know. So when you dive into something and you make a mistake, this is why people would reflect, and people would have whistleblowers that would call it out, right? Like this is wrong, it shouldn't happen. And
Yeah.
then ethics need to be built around it, and best practices need to be identified, and the right stakeholders need to actually come in, like stand to it and do something about it, right? and
Mhm.
and and seeing that how data privacy has become a very important topic, especially
Yeah,
after what happened with Facebook, right? Like I see it as a step to like a progress. I see this as progress. It's a step forward. People learned, and now they're taking action,
yeah. Now they're
right?
aware of
Yeah,
the implications that
but
yeah,
but if you focus too much on, oh, like this is our reality and things are not going to change, it's only going to get worse. Yes, it could. Or you can have more people who are influencing progress towards something that's actually productive for our society, because right now we're still evolving with all of this. It's so new to us. All this happened in 20 years, the
mhm,
dot-com era, and along with all technology and digitization and everything that's happening around you. It only happened in the last 20 years.
yeah,
Like
yeah.
if you look at the grand scheme of things, in my opinion, we're still adjusting to what's going on as a society.
Yeah, no, I see what you mean. I mean, the change to your point was so fast that we couldn't see some things coming, and now we're
Yeah,
scrambling to learn
and
from
and
those lessons.
and honestly, like bad actors help you identify the vulnerabilities in the system. Like something that happens with COVID, right? It really helps you understand the vulnerabilities in supply chain. And companies would say that, oh, cutting costs and efficiency is the way to go before the pandemic. And when they got hit hard because of all the sudden, shutdown that happened,
Yeah, yeah,
they now rethink. They're like, you know what? No, resilience is more important than just flat out cutting down cost. We need to make
yeah.
sure we survive, right? So it's people, they don't know what they don't know, and they're constantly like adapting, and we're really good at adapting, and we have all these frameworks and all these tools around us to really help us actually leverage them for productive use cases rather than just you know looking at it like just exploiting it. But people that do exploit and do like to take advantage for whatever reason, it helps everyone see that, you know what, we have a vulnerability there. How are we going to address it? And I'm sure, like, I have faith that like it could be a really great way of learning from these mistakes and improving it.
You have a really good point, man. It's like we almost need these extreme situations to happen to, like you said, point out the blind spots and the weak chains within the system.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Well, Mo, I think we're well over, I don't know how long, 40 minutes, 50 minutes. Uh,
Yeah, man.
but I I certainly do think we can talk for like hours on time. So
Well, I know.
let's cut this one and then recircle back to some other points in another conversation I wanna talk with you about.
Yeah, man, I'd love to.
This was really interesting though, man. I know we scheduled this and we went back and forth, but finally made it happen. So I appreciate you putting in the time.
Oh, no worries, man. It's always a pleasure for me to come on and talk to you. And thank you for having me.
Thank you, brother. Yeah, you too, man. I'll talk to
Yeah.
you.
All right, man. Stay safe. Take care.
You too, bro.